Welcome back to Miss Keelan's YouTube channel. I miss you guys. I'm going a little stir crazy, but that's okay. We are ready for chapter 8 of Escaping the Giant Wave. You guys have almost finished the book. There are 12 chapters. You're on chapter 8. Today is still Tuesday, April 21st. BB and Kyle were headed up the hill with Josie and Norm away from the tsunami. A tsunami warning has happened in town, and what did their tsunami siren sound like? It was not a normal siren. In fact, it sounded like moo, moo, which I do not understand, and I need to do some research and figure out if that's a normal thing across the board. I do not understand why cows mooing would be a tsunami warning sound. They said it was to keep people from panicking, but I feel like that's not the smartest decision. But we're going to see what happens to Kyle and BB and Josie and Norm as they continue to head up the forest and try to escape the giant wave. All right. This celebration on board the Elegant Empress was in full swing. Cotton ball clouds drifted across the sky, and the hum of the ship's engine accompanied a string quartet that played soft music in the background. The Davidsons filled their plates at the buffet table. "You can win Salesman of the Year anytime," Mrs. Davidson told her husband, "if it means an evening like this." "It is special," he agreed, "but don't expect me to win every year. Enjoy it while you can." "I feel guilty being on a yacht eating grilled vegetables and salmon and chocolate mousse while the kids have pizza in that dumpy old hotel room." "Now don't start worrying about the kids," Mr. Davidson said. "BB seems to like having Kyle be the sitter, and I don't think he actually minds that much. Plus, they'd rather have pizza than veggies any day." Just then, Mr. Ray, the president of the real estate company, signaled to the quartet to stop playing. He went to the microphone and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner, but the captain has received a radio message that the town of Fisher and Fisher Beach were hit by an earthquake a short time ago." Mrs. Davidson gasped and reached for her husband's hand. "There wasn't any major damage, and as far as we know, there were no injuries. But the power is out in the entire area, and we have reports of a few fires that started when the earthquake broke a natural gas line." Mrs. Davidson opened her purse and removed her cell phone. Mr. Davidson took a piece of paper out of his pocket and handed it to her. On it was the phone number of the Totem Pole Inn. She punched in the number and waited. "Nothing happened," she said. "It doesn't ring." "Well, if the power is out, the hotel's telephone line is probably out too." "I'll keep you posted on any further developments," Mr. Ray said. "Now, please enjoy the rest of your dinner. We'll be presenting the awards soon." Instead of returning to their table, the Davidsons approached Mr. Ray. Shouldn't the Elegant Empress head back to shore?" Mr. Davidson asked. "Well, when the earthquake is over," Mr. Ray said, "there's no reason to go back early." "We left our children at the hotel," Mr. Davidson said, "and the phone isn't working. Is there any way we can contact the hotel by radio?" "I'll ask the captain," Mr. Ray said, but he looked annoyed. "You stay here and finish your dinner," Mr. Davidson said. "I'll find the captain." "I'll come with you," Mrs. Davidson said. They left their food at their places, then found the captain and asked about the radio contact and people on shore. "We left our children by themselves. Our son's 13 and he stayed with his sister many times, but never in an earthquake. We'll be able to enjoy the cruise if we know they're okay." "Which hotel?" the captain asked. "The Totem Pole Inn." A strange expression flickered across the captain's face. "What is it?" Mr. Davidson said. "What's wrong?" That's one of the buildings that caught fire. That's in the big new hotel right beside it. I understood that the Totem Pole Inn was closed. I didn't realize people were staying there." "We have to go back to Fisher Beach," Mr. Davidson said. "Now. Our kids might be hurt or in danger." "I'll have radio contact with shore," the captain said. "I'll see what I can learn and then—" "Excuse me, sir." One of the crew approached the captain. "There's a tsunami warning for the Fisher Beach area." "When?" "It's due to hit in about half an hour." Mrs. Davidson whispered, "No." Mr. Davidson turned pale. "We won't be able to return as scheduled, sir," the crewman said. "Should we stay here or head out to sea?" "Out to sea." "We can't head further out to sea," Mr. Davidson said. I'm responsible for the passengers on this ship, the captain said, and the farther out we are, the safer they'll be. Excuse me. He hurried away and disappeared into a room marked crew only. Mr. Davidson turned to the crewman. Our children are at Fisher Beach, and the hotel they're in is on fire. We have to get back there right away. Is there a small boat or a life raft we can use? The crewman shook his head. That would be foolhardy. He said, you'd risk your own lives, and even if you made it, there's no way you could get to the hotel in time. We're too far out at sea. The town broadcasts tsunami warnings. Your kids will be told what to do. We should have never left them alone, Mrs. Davidson said. The tsunamis usually peter out before they reach shore, the crewman said. There's never really been damage on this part of the coast. We've had lots of warnings, but they don't really happen. They turn out to be small, and that'll probably happen again. Thank you for telling us, Mrs. Davidson said. I hope it's a small wave this time, too. The crewman left, and the Davidsons stood alone on the deck as the music drifted out of the banquet area. We may as well go back to our table, Mr. Davidson said. I've lost my appetite. So have I, but I don't want to miss anything that the captain tells the group. They walked back to the party. We should tell the Hazeltons about the fire, Mrs. Davidson said. As far as I know, their son was in the hotel, too. It would only worry them. They can't go there or do anything to help their boy any more than we can help Kyle and BB. Still, I would want to know, Mrs. Davidson said. They spotted the Hazeltons across the room and were headed that way when the captain made an announcement about the tsunami warning. We're heading due west, he said, to ride the waves before they gain their full size. I expect the ship to handle any surges easily, but all passengers need to put on a life jacket and leave it on until the danger is past. Mrs. Hazelton screamed and demanded that the ship head for shore immediately. My baby's at Fisher Beach, she sobbed. My baby! Mr. Hazelton threatened to sue the real estate company if anything happened to Darren. Mr. Ray did his best to calm them down, but the Hazeltons continued to create a long scene after the captains hurried out of the room. Mr. and Mrs. Davidson put on their life jackets and sat praying silently for the safety of their children. I don't know about you all, but as a mother, I would be a hot mess if I were their parents. And I don't know about your families, but I bet they would be too. After Kyle and BB left him, Darren watched the firefighters at the Frontier Lodge. Huge streams of water arced from the thick hoses, making the fire hiss and spit like an angry cat. A dozen people milled around, talking about where they had been during the earthquake. Everybody had a story to tell. Darren listened, but he said nothing. He didn't want anyone to know that he had been overcome by smoke and rescued by that wimpy Kyle Davidson. If Kyle ever told what happened, Darren, he would deny it. He wondered if his parents were still on that yacht. Did they know about the earthquake and the fires? If they did, they'd be plenty worried about him. He had wanted to go swimming or walk on the beach after they left, but Mom and Dad insisted it wasn't safe for him to do those things by himself. He was supposed to stay in their room until they returned. Period. No excuses. Ha! Darren thought. It's a good thing he hadn't done that. If he had stayed in that room, he'd be a goner. When his parents got back and discovered that totem pole inn had burned to the ground, they'd be sorry they told him to stay in the room. Maybe he would let them look for him for a while before he showed them he was okay. It was fun to be out here alone with all the excitement of the fire and nobody to boss him around. Along with the shouts of the firefighters, he heard the snapping and burning of wood and somewhere in the distance, the mooing of cows. A van with an official seal on the door drove into the hotel driveway and stopped behind the fire truck. Large megaphones anchored to the roof of the van blared out, "Attention! A tsunami warning has been issued for the Fisher Beach area. For your own safety, go to higher ground immediately. Repeat, a tsunami is expected to hit Fisher Beach at 5:30 p.m. Go to higher ground now and stay there until you're notified that it is safe to return." Darren looked at his watch. It was already 5:20. The tsunami would be here in 10 minutes. He scowled. Kyle had said he was going up the hill because there might be a tsunami. But Darren didn't want to be wrong and have Kyle be right. He had been so sure that Kyle was foolish to run away. Now the van made it sound as if the beach might be dangerous, just like Kyle said. Darren glanced around, wondering if all the other people who were watching the fire would heed the warning and run for higher ground. Nearby, a group of teenagers began debating what to do. "I'm going to stay right here," a girl said. "If a big wave hits the beach, I'll be able to see it from here, and we're far enough back to be safe." Two women hurried past. "You won't be safe here," one woman said to the teens. "You need to get as far from the beach as you can. Everybody does." The two women got into a pickup truck at the edge of the parking area, started the engine, and drove off toward the town of Fisher. The girl called after them, "Send me a postcard!" And her friends laughed. Darren laughed along with the teenagers, but his laughter felt forced. What if those women were right? It's embarrassing enough that Kyle had rescued him in the hallway. It would be even worse if he was on top of the hill while Darren got hit by a big wave at the beach. He turned to the man standing next to him, who wore a bellhop uniform from the Frontier Lodge. "Are you going up the hill?" Darren asked. Not me," the man said. "I've heard that song too many times before." "What do you mean?" "The government is always coming around with tsunami warnings that scare away the tourists. People get hysterical, check out of the hotels, and leave town. They don't come back even though the tsunami never hits. I'm tired of the whole thing. It's bad for business." Anyone should know about possible danger, Darren thought. It was the bellhop who worked here every day. "If it was really risky to be here," the bellhop continued, "those men wouldn't be driving around in their van scaring people. They'd be racing uphill to save themselves. This is just another false alarm. It happens all the time." A woman standing nearby spoke up. "I worked at the Totem Pole Inn for 10 years, and my mother worked there before me, and all that time and never got hit by a tidal wave." Darren smiled. So Kyle was wrong after all. Good. He decided to go down to the water's edge. If he saw a big wave approaching, he could always run away then. Even if the wave caught up to him, he was a strong swimmer. He'd be okay, and tomorrow he could tease Kyle about being a scaredy cat who ran away from a foot-high wave. And Darren liked that idea. He looked at his watch again. 5:24. Only 6 minutes until the tidal wave was supposed to arrive. Darren turned away from the smoking hotel and hurried down the wooden stairs that led to the beach. Someone had started a small driftwood bonfire. 4 people stood near it, and other people gathered wood and tossed it to the flames. Their voices buzzed with excitement as they took turns calling out the exact same thing. 5:20 time! 5:25! Darren walked past the bonfire and stood as close to the water as he could without getting his feet wet. He felt daring and brave. 5:26! What a day! Darren had never had so much exciting things happen. He'd been in an earthquake and a hotel fire, and now he was standing at the edge of the ocean during a tsunami warning. He looked toward the horizon. None of the approaching waves seemed any higher than the waves that had splashed the shore all day. The bellhop was right. The officials were frightening people for no reason. The sun was a red basketball as it slid toward the horizon. Tiny white lights twinkled far out to sea, and he wondered if those were from the Elegant Empress. 5:27! The voices shouted. Darren kicked off his sneaker and waded into the water. He wished Kyle could see him now. When they talked about this tomorrow, Darren would make Kyle look like a baby. Someone shouted from the top of the wooden steps. "Hey, you people on the beach! There's a killer wave coming! Get away from the water now!" Darren froze. Killer wave sounded a lot worse than tsunami. What if he wasn't being brave by staying in the water? What if he was being stupid? Kyle and BB were not here now. They wouldn't know whether Darren stayed or ran. He could still brag tomorrow that he had waited in the water while they ran away. The shout came again. "Run, you fools! A killer wave is almost here!" Darren bolted away from the water. 2 of the people who had been watching the bonfire ran after him, ignoring the jeers of their companions. Darren took the steps 2 at a time. He reached the top and was racing toward the burning Totem Pole Inn when he heard the voices on the beach yell, 5:30! A cheer rose from around the bonfire. Darren kept running. So what do you all think? Do you think that the officials are just freaking them out for no reason? They said that in the past 20 years there hasn't been a big tsunami. They've heard the warning multiple times, but it's never happened. So Darren's starting to get scared and he's running uphill. But we'll have to see what actually happens when we return for Chapter 9. See you later. Bye.